Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Eerie International, episode 483 this week. My name is David from the United States.
I'm Andi from Germany.
And I'm Dave from the UK.
We are here to talk about the 1980 classic, ? Some would say yes, from Canada, The Changeling. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. You can find us wherever you found us and maybe other places too. We are a horror podcast that talks about horror stuff, whether it's video games, TV shows, movies, music, albums. Those are the same thing, kind of. Stage plays, scripts, whatever it is. If there's a horror bend to it, we will dive in, take a look, and discuss it. You can find us on social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you have longer form thoughts, feel free to send them to us over at our Gmail, eerieinternational@gmail.com. And we will get into it. Yeah, I mean, that's the gist. No further ado. Let's dive into stuff that we've gotten into.
I like that you
week.
recently added stage play scripts to the intro, and we still have to do that episode yet.
It's planned. Yeah.
Still haven't done it yet.
I think I rearranged some of my books the other day, and I bundled all of my horror stage play book script books that I have together, and I think it put it at the top of my head. It's like, oh yeah, we will do this. So yeah, it's on the horizon somewhere. All right, Andi and I, we have a few things to talk about that we got into this past week. Andi, I think you've got one thing. Kick us off. What did you get into this week?
We watched a movie called Woman of the Hour. Have you guys heard of this movie? Just by the title, does that ring any bell?
Is it
Not for me.
Anna Kendrick?
Yeah, it's Anna Kendrick's
Okay.
directorial debut, and she also
Yeah.
stars in the movie. As Wikipedia says, a 2023 American crime thriller film directed by Anna Kendrick in her directorial debut and written by Ian McDonald is based on the true story of Rodney Alcala, a contestant on an episode of television show The Dating Game in 1978, who was later discovered to be a serial killer, which is a pretty intriguing premise to a movie in its own right, and then realizing it's a real thing, it's a real story that happened. Makes it even crazier. So this movie showed up on German Netflix recently, and we watched it. And I say, if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. I think it's really good. I didn't know anything about that case. I hadn't heard about that case before, or at least if I had heard about it, it's not one of those cases that comes up so often that you just know about it. And so I didn't know where the story would go. I didn't know what happened in real life. I didn't know, did they catch him? How did they catch him? What happened to him? What happened to some of the other characters or persons in the movie? And the movie, in my mind, finds a very interesting structure in its narration, so that up until the end, you don't quite know what happened to him, what happened to some of the other people that you get to meet during the course of the movie. So the core of the movie is this moment on the game show. Anna Kendrick is the female contestant on The Dating Game, and the serial killer is one of the three guys on that show. But that's not the only story in the movie. You have other women in the movie as well that encountered the serial killer, and the movie doesn't tell that story in a strictly chronological way. It jumps around a bit. So you see him meeting other women, and then it gets back to the game show, and then you see him meeting another woman in a different year yet again, and then it gets back to the game show again. And as a viewer, as I said, if you don't really know about the case, you don't know what happened to Anna Kendrick's character, what happened to that character in real life, what happened to that character in real life. And up until the end, you really do not know. And I was very intrigued by the structure of the movie. I thought it was very suspenseful because I didn't know, and the movie didn't let me know where it would go and how it would end. And it felt like a very strong debut for a first-time director, and I think it's a movie that is well worth seeing. So if it's already available to you, maybe it's on your guys' Netflix as well. I do not know.
I think so,
I
yeah.
would say put it on your list. It's worth seeing. I would recommend it.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm
looks...
vaguely aware of it. Go ahead. Sorry, Dave.
No. I was just going to say I'm pretty sure because it looks from everything I've read about it while you were talking about it. And I was just kind of skipping through, like, it's her debut. It was strongly received. Netflix is brought up a lot, which makes me think that perhaps it was funded.
I'm pretty sure it
by
was.
them. So
yeah,
in that
original
case, normally a film of that type, they would have it on most of their major. I'm literally just going into Netflix now to try and see if it's here, but they would have it in most of their territories. Woman of the Hour, and Poppy is trying to. Yes, it's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the Netflix was the original distributor, but for us, it only showed up recently. I don't remember it being on Netflix and them taking it off again and then bringing it back again. So maybe they didn't originally release it in Germany on Netflix, and we only just got it now.
How wild that this dating show in the 70s had a serial killer connected to it, and then also the host claimed he worked for the CIA as an assassin. Like just a crazy I don't know,
that's a hell of a Venn diagram, isn't it?
Of stuff. Yeah. Which makes me want to rewatch. I haven't seen that movie in forever, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, but I remember liking it a lot in high school. But yeah, crazy. Cool. That it for you this week, Andi?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. I have a couple of horror things and then two things that are not horror that had an element, so I'll mention them in 10 seconds or less. I saw the new Pixar movie Hoppers with my kid, and there is some straight up like horror stuff in the movie in the third act that I thought was pretty awesome. Even afterward, Daniel, we were leaving, he was like, remember that movie that we watched, the Pixar movie about the boy with the aliens, Elio? And I was like, yeah. He was like, that movie had horror too, and this movie also had horror stuff. So even he picked up on it. But it was good. I enjoyed it, and there was some fun horror stuff. And then to bundle the other thing that's kind of tangentially connected, yesterday he and I went to the Indiana State Museum. They have a legit old school IMAX theater there, when they do like the Christopher Nolan movies and stuff, where they have like the 30 theaters in the world that can play 70 millimeter IMAX. One of them is in Indianapolis, and they just re-released, or not even re-released, for the first time ever, they remastered Kiki's Delivery Service in 4K for IMAX specifically. And we went and saw that on this massive screen, and it was amazing. And she's a witch, so I wanted to mention it. It's also one of my favorite movies of all time, so I wanted to throw that in there. The two horror movies I did watch, I went and saw The Bride, the new Maggie Gyllenhaal film that she wrote and directed, that is a riff on The Bride of Frankenstein. I enjoyed it. It's if you've seen anything or anybody talk about this movie, odds are they mentioned that it's a mess, and that's because it's a fucking mess. It's a real messy movie that has, honestly, like I think the biggest problem for me personally in terms of the messiness is the subplots. There's a few different subplots that are going that are either meandering or don't really go anywhere or tie up in a very sort of contrived, kind of random way. The core sort of, duo of Jessie Buckley as the bride and Christian Bale as Frankenstein's monster, I think is definitely the strongest part and is kind of the main thing of the movie. So I have a little bit of bias, being such a massive Universal Monsters fan. Bride of Frankenstein specifically is my favorite. So there was a lot of excitement for me going into this, and wanting to kind of see what she did. I didn't have any expectations in terms of like, I wonder how they'll reference the original film. It seemed pretty clear that, first of all, it's not Universal that put it out. So I don't exactly know how a lot of the trademark stuff works. I would imagine, based off of merchandise and everything else that you see, that there's probably pretty specific attributes and visual things with these iterations of the characters that they own in some way or have some sort of legal hold over. I've always assumed it's sort of like how no one owns Thor, but Marvel's Thor is a version that you couldn't just put in your comic or whatever. So that's my guess. It's pulled from the novel as like the source material. And it's, man, I told our friend Austin that it reminded me not necessarily like the content or the execution, even maybe the execution a little bit, of that movie that me, Ryan Turek, and 4 other people watched, which was called Lost River. That was Ryan Gosling's directorial debut. I think he wrote it too. He's not in it, but it was a movie I liked quite a bit, even though it wasn't the best. You could tell he was clearly, it seemed like he was influenced by working with Refn on Drive and on Only God Forgives. It was around or after that, shortly after that moment. And there was something about the movie, the atmosphere, the ideas, the performances, the just kind of the style of it that felt very intentional, felt very curated, felt very much like a director that had a vision, had something to say, had something to put on screen, and they were able to do that for better or for worse. And both films, Lost River and The Bride, for me, hit more than they missed, but there's definitely plenty of misses in the movie. I've seen people on Letterboxd absolutely love it, give it like 5 stars. It's the best movie ever, which I think is kind of fucking crazy. But then I've also seen people talk about it as it's like the worst piece of garbage ever, which I also think is kind of crazy. It's if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it has like a 50 or 60 some percent. Like it's pretty split. But I think it's not because it's just a middle of the road sort of like, no risk taken kind of whatever forgettable movie. I think it's because she does take some pretty wild swings. One of the biggest ones, and this is established in the first 5 minutes of the movie. So it's a minor spoiler because it's not in the trailers, but it is established immediately. So if you're worried about spoilers, skip ahead a little bit. But there's a motif, mechanism, whatever you want to call it, that she establishes pretty early on. Jessie Buckley plays the bride. She also plays Mary Shelley. So you have these sort of, and this did remind me of The Bride of Frankenstein, the Universal film, because they had a similar thing at the beginning of that film where Mary Shelley and her husband, and there's another dude there, Byron, I think, or Percy Shelley, well, whoever, I forget all the connections. They're all hanging out and talking. So it did remind me of that a bit, but you have Mary Shelley in these like shots where she's in darkness, and if I understood it correctly, she's like speaking from beyond the grave, like she's dead and she's wanting to tell this story. So there's this whole thing where like she's almost possessing this woman in the 30s and telling this story through her. So if that sounds, again, messy, it kind of is. I think Jessie Buckley, I love Jessie Buckley. I think she's amazing. I've seen, the first movie I saw her in was that movie called Beast, which I talked about on the show years and years ago. Seen her in plenty of stuff since then. I think she's always fantastic. Both her and Bale, I think, carry the movie for sure. Their performances are over the top and crazy and very fun to watch. And I think that's why, for me, this particular thing with Mary Shelley, like possessing her, worked, because you have the bride that occasionally will like, it almost feels like she has Tourette's or something, like, and I don't even mean that as a throwaway joke. I mean like literally how you see people who suffer from Tourette's, like how they have, verbal tics or outbursts or whatever, where Mary Shelley is either possessing her directly or communicating with her, and she just kind of goes off on she starts saying stuff in another accent, and Mary Shelley's accent, like, and it's not, it happens a lot at the beginning when it's kind of being established, and then less so throughout the movie. But it's a pretty big part of the movie that it makes sense to me why they didn't put it in trailers and stuff, because A, it would be hard to convey that in a trailer, but then I think B, people would be like, what the fuck is this? I'm not into this. So I could see that being a deal breaker for a lot of people too, because it is an odd kind of thing. But again, to me, felt very intentionally done and felt very much like Maggie Gyllenhaal had a story that she wanted to tell in a very specific way. So yeah, I liked it despite its flaws, but it definitely has flaws, and I can see why there would be some division with the movie for sure.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Because, I mean, it seems like the obvious answer is going to be the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway because it's in my head. Mary Shelley, who invented the Frankenstein concept, is a character in this movie. So, do they explain how her creations are actually made flesh? Like, do they retcon it so that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein story was essentially inspired by things that she actually knew about and experienced? Or
no, not really. And that's one of the things that I saw on. I was reading the like official discussion thread on Reddit, and that's one thing I saw people on there talking about and complaining. So like, there's a lot of the stuff that this is all at the very beginning you see in the trailer. She's this like kind of, it's set in the 30s. It's like flapper kind of stuff, Gatsby, whatever. And she gets killed at the beginning, and then Frankenstein's monster shows up to talk to this doctor played by Annette Bening, who is essentially the kind of stand-in for Victor Frankenstein. Who I think that's his name, right? I've never read the book, so that's a glaring thing on my part.
No, you're right. You're right. It's Victor.
I always forget if there's some of them have Henry Franken. I can't remember where that happened, if it was one of the movies, but I know other ones have run with it. But anyway, so she basically fills that role of bringing her back to life. She knows about when she meets Frankenstein's mom. I think they call him Frank in the movie, Christian Bale. She knows of Dr. Frankenstein's like work. So it's a world where that stuff like happened, I guess. Like Frankenstein's monster's already bouncing around, and he's been around for like over 100 years at this point. So it's not the world of like our world. Like when you see Mary Shelley in the movie, she's in like the afterlife or something. Like she's not. It's totally a supernatural sort of conceit or whatever. But I think the idea is almost like this is the story that she wanted to tell afterward within the world or something and didn't, which is a little ballsy on Gyllenhaal's part to be like, let me, put my voice into this classic, like, here's the story I really wanted to tell. But again, like, it's that kind of movie. It's a very intentional, like, swing. I've seen people compare this to the second Joker movie, which I did not see. I thought the first Joker movie kind of sucked, and the hype for it was insane to me in a lot of ways. And I think it also did some damage culturally too, but that's a whole other side tangent. But the sequel, I had really no interest in it and probably will never watch it. I can already sort of understand, though, based off of what I heard about that movie, why there's been some comparisons. It's from what I've read and heard about the sequel, the Joker sequel, it's a movie that they kind of intentionally didn't give people what they wanted and sort of did their own kind of, fantasy, whatever, artistic swing sort of deal. I think Todd Phillips is kind of a fucking hack. I'm not really into his stuff in general, so I don't really care about, his vision. But I respect it in the sense that, like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, like, that's the kind of stuff that studios are not typically into, and don't necessarily trust filmmakers to do it, or once it starts getting made by committee or whatever else, any of that sort of, artistic, I keep using the word swing, but that's kind of what it feels like, or that's what feels like the right word anyway. That stuff gets sapped out of it. So again, there's a lot of swings, and I think a lot of them connect, but a lot of them are kind of just, dull misses. Like there's the whole subplot with Peter Sarsgaard and Penelope Cruz. It's odd. Like you get you understand. Movie? Yeah. So they're like the detectives. So and it's similar to. So she's Maggie Gyllenhaal's married to Peter Sarsgaard. So there's the connection there. Her brother obviously is Jake Gyllenhaal. He's also in the movie. He also has a similar sort of subplot that kind of goes nowhere. And so it's hard not to be a little cynical and think like, she wanted to cast, family in it or whatever else and have these roles for them. I don't know that it was necessarily that black and white, but when you see the execution of some of the threads, it does kind of feel like, there wasn't really a plan here. It doesn't feel like. But yeah, the Penelope Cruz and Sarsgaard are like the two detectives that are like following the trying to find them, like especially once it gets into the like Bonnie and Clyde sort of vibe that the movie has. But even that is just so fucking tenuous because it's like I do like Frank, his character. He likes going to the movies. He loves Jake Gyllenhaal's an actor in the movie, and he loves his movies. So you see a lot of these films within the film that Jake Gyllenhaal is in, and they're like, you know, Fred Astaire, kind of like musicals and stuff like that. And so I do like the simplicity and like the joy that Frank's character has with going to the movies and like the magic of cinema and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, the like detective thing, they're just following what movies are playing where and then just kind of lucking out by going there. Like it doesn't really make it doesn't really work. But again, I think Buckley, especially if you didn't have Jessie Buckley in this, or if you didn't have another actor of her caliber that could really like keep you, you know, locked in, then it would be a lot easier to sort of, you know, wander, for your attention to wander and for you to be like, this doesn't make sense, and start to kind of pick it apart. But I think because of her, because of Christian Bale too, and their dynamic and their energy, and then the atmosphere of the movie, the style, the costumes, the sets, there's it's not a musical, but there are musical moments in it. There's little, you know, flourishes where like they'll sort of show up in the movies within the movies, but it's clearly like in their heads kind of stuff. Honestly, what I thought about more than anything is, not more than anything, but more than a few times I thought, man, if I was still with Amanda, my ex-wife, this is the kind of movie she fucking hated. Like where there would be stuff like this that didn't make sense, but it was more artsy. For me, I could lock into it and be like, yeah, I get it. That's cool. Whatever. But that sort of like, you know, not realistic sort of, I don't even know if it would fit under magical realism, but like, you know, the sort of artistic dream logic-y kind of shit. For a lot of people I know is just an absolute, you know, deal breaker that pulls them out of it. So makes sense why it's divisive. But, and again, I think I had a little extra slice of, small slice, but a little extra slice of bias. I mean, I'm watching the movie with the Bride of Frankenstein tattoo on my leg. So, I mean, I'm invested to a certain degree already. But yeah, anyway. I enjoyed it. It seems like it's not making much money, so that sucks. Like I hope that it doesn't have, you know, ripple effects or whatever else. I mean, this isn't her first directorial film. I think she's based off of this. I think most of the problems stem from the script, but directorially speaking, I think she did a good job, and it, you know, it kind of works in spite of itself, at least for me.
Unfortunately, a lot of the time, though, whenever a film doesn't do well, it always seems to lay at the lap of the director. Right?
Oh, totally. And especially if it's a woman, like it's going to be a thing of like, oh, well, female direct. Like I read a long interview with her in, I forget where it was at. It was like the New Yorker or New York Times. It was some more prestigious, whatever.
One of the New York things. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. And she talked in there about how she had been talking, I think with, I want to say either she had been talking to Chloe Zhao or like they were in the same kind of the same mix of conversation about how like there's more opportunity than there used to be, but there's not opportunity for bigger budget stuff. The moment a big budget, huge production is involved, then suddenly it's like, oh, well, we need a man for this. Like, I don't know that necessarily producers are saying it that explicitly, but like that's kind of the thing right now. And so there's still obviously all these tiers and layers to it. So
I mean, hopefully that's just a case of there needs to be that one first female director that's given like $100 million or however much to break through and succeed, and then
so that's the thing, because Chloe Zhao did Eternals, and then it was like the first big Marvel, you know, misfire that everybody considered, which I don't think is her fault.
Disagree. I think just because tonally it's different from the rest of the Marvel oeuvre doesn't mean that. For me personally, I enjoyed it, but I am, as everyone knows, a massive DC apologist. So. That kind of tone, that slightly grittier, slightly less colourful colour palette, I have no problem with. And the movie's got its problems, but actually, if you dig into a lot of Marvel movies, they've got their problems as well. So,
totally.
I think it's really unfair that that Chloe Zhao has had as much of has she had a huge amount of blowback for that? I guess she hasn't really been given another major film since then. So yeah, that's
not at that level. I mean, she's made she just did she just do what did she just do? Was it Hamlet's Ghost? Did she make that? Or whatever that Hamlet movie is. It's just called Hamnet. Yeah, she did that, right? Yeah, she did. Which also stars Jessie Buckley.
But again, more of a budget, not budget, but the type of movie it is means that you can make it for a lower amount, so it's less of a risk.
$30 million.
Yeah, so they're more willing to allow a woman to helm it. I think literally all it needs is for a big blockbuster movie to be given to a woman and for it to succeed, and then that glass ceiling, hopefully, I'm probably being very optimistic and idealistic here, but hopefully, like, once somebody breaks that glass ceiling, then studios will be a lot less likely to be like, we need to give it to a man with, like someone with a penis needs to direct this movie,
right?
Because it really is kind of a ridiculous concept that only men can make movies above a certain price point. It's completely unfounded. It's the only reason that someone can point to the fact that that might be the case is because nobody has given women a chance to get out from under this patriarchal shadow and actually do it. And as I said, sure. I enjoyed Immortals because I'm an idiot, so whatever.
I've still never seen it.
I need to stop doing that as well, actually. Like, talking about being an idiot for enjoying stuff when actually, no, it's just enjoyable shit.
I'd like to watch it. It also came out when I was crazy depressed, so I was like, it just was hard for me to connect with anything. But I've seen clips from it, and every time I've seen clips from it, I'm like, oh, this seems kind of cool. Like it was unlike everything else that was going on with their template and everything else. But
unfortunately, the main problem it's got now is that it's completely inconsequential to everything else that's happened in the Marvel universe, to a point that even Ant-Man, like the Quantum Mania movie that starred a bad guy who then just got squashed because the actor couldn't fucking behave himself like a normal human. Actually, I don't know if that's proven, right? Like the major allegations. Yeah, I'm not just okay. Like I wasn't going on bad old information. But yeah, like the introduction of what's his face, the singer, his character at the end of the movie, completely like has not been followed up on at all. I forget his name. He's a British singer who everyone loves. He was in one of those boy bands.
Yeah, Harry Styles or somebody.
Him.
I think.
Yeah, Harry Styles. You can see how much I'm up to date with the musical stars of the current days, but also like you've got the whole Blade thing that was done at the end, which has not worked out well for anyone involved. Kit Harington apparently isn't going to be back anytime soon either, and it's just like, what did this movie do other than literally the only thing that the only testament that this movie exists is that there's a giant fucking Titan's hand coming out of the ocean that has only just been, I say only just, like the movie isn't like 18 months old at this point, acknowledged by the latest Captain America movie. That's literally the only time that anyone in the Marvel cinema universe, as far as I can remember, has acknowledged that anything to do with that movie actually happening. So yeah, it's a fucking uphill battle, man. Not only to get the movies, but then to actually, number one, be taken seriously, and number two, have that work acknowledged in any way, shape, or form after the fact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
everyone hated that last Thor movie, which means everyone is an idiot. Because that movie's great.
I really like that though.
I like that movie.
Yeah, I did too. I just looked it up. Bridemaid cost between 80 and 90 million, and it made 17. So pretty rough. Yeah. So.
I was really interested.
Tell me 80
it.
to 90 is a low budget, please.
That's
I mean, compared to 200, of course, yeah, sure, but not everything is a Marvel movie at $200 million.
Absolutely, but again, it's another one of these movies that just for one reason or another just hasn't performed. And I mean, when I saw the trailers for The Bride, I was up for that shit, especially because it came out around my birthday.
Oh, me too.
And it was the whole Bonnie and Clyde meets Bride of Frankenstein thing. That was the selling point for me. So, like, the trailers did their job. I've not gone to watch it. So, can I complain too much
part
about
of the problem, Dave Roberts.
I know. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm acknowledging the fact that I'm part of the problem. I am part of the patriarchy, and I'm the one that's holding these female directors down. But, yeah. Like,
movie was called The Groom. We'd all go.
Exactly.
The Groom of Frankenstein. I'd watch that movie too, honestly.
Fucking gay monster movie? Fuck yeah.
I do. Last thing I'll say about it, I also I really like the aesthetic of the movie, and like when she is brought back to life, she coughs up and vomits up this like black sludge stuff that they pump into her, and it essentially like tattoos on her face. So she has this sort of like cool. I don't know. I almost thought about it as similar to the streak in the hair of the old one. Like it's this like sort of like the second time I've used the word flourish, but it's this like visual flourish for her that she has throughout the movie, which I liked too. Every once in a while I'll watch movies or TV shows, or I'll run into some sort of character where I'll be like, oh, I want to get, and I have had to curb this feeling because I have in my closet here in the office probably at least 15 to 20 different original pieces of art that are up in folders because I don't have space to hang them, so I can't keep getting commissions. But I every once in a while I'll run into a character where I'm like, I'd like to get commissions from different comic book artists of this character, just because the design and the style of it is so cool, and to see it done by different artists.
It's all these bookshelves, man. I keep saying, like, I'd love to hang more stuff up in the back bedroom, but I put too many fucking bookshelves up.
Yeah, that's
I thought you'd go in the direction I want to get it tattooed, because that's
that's too, maybe,
also often
an
instinct that we have.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You're right. Okay, cool. And then the only other thing I'll mention really fast, I finally watched Man Finds Tape, which Andi has talked about on the podcast in the past. This is produced. I just completely forgot his name. The guy who works with Benson and Moorhead, who also produced Lawson, thank you.
All three of them produced it.
Yeah, they all, and I think Benson and Moorhead are also in it. They're the two guys in the bar that you see through like security camera footage or whatever that fall over at one point. A lot of people fall over in this movie. It happens a lot. I enjoyed it. It's definitely, you could see watching it, and I'm kind of gonna kind of not really say anything about it, because there were things about it that absolutely surprised me that I had no idea going into it, which I'm sure you said in your review as well of it, Andi, like that the directions that it went into, I was like, oh, holy shit, okay. Like this, it very much feels like it's going to be one sort of horror subgenre, and it is that, but it also goes into some wild directions that oftentimes are not fully explained. In a way that for me worked pretty well. I was fine with that, that there was sort of like a glimpse into a much larger universe. It doesn't feel as effective as a Benson and Moorhead type movie, but again, it also, feels very much like a movie that Benson and Moorhead and Lawson would see and be like, oh, we have to help, get this out there and distribute this. It's in that same sort of vein and style and everything else. So didn't hook me the way that their stuff did necessarily, but the times that it really did connect with me, it was for a lot of the same sort of overlap and reasons. And as a massive Benson Moorhead fan, and we've talked about them on the show a lot, and I bring them up pretty regularly, like I'm always going to be cool with more movies like that, especially low budget stuff or lower budget stuff that is finding creative ways to sort of exceed or extend past what would be a comfortable place for them to operate in. I also really enjoyed the fact that it wears the like true crime podcasting sort of vibe on its sleeve and really leans into that in a way that I felt was pretty effective. It felt very much like you're watching at least at the beginning, watching a film version of Serial or S-Town or one of those narrative nonfiction sort of podcasts that are documenting something but doing it in a very like sort of polished, prestigious way. So yeah, I liked it. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you follow my take that it's a John Constantine movie from the perspective of the civilians?
Yes, 100%. Okay, I did not remember that you said that, but the moment you said John Constantine, I was like, I know exactly where he's going. Yep, yeah. You're absolutely right.
It's after we came home from watching the movie, I immediately went on Blue Sky and found the two directors and posed that idea to them and they responded and said nothing that they thought about while making the movie, but it would make sense. Yes.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's some of the stuff that I was talking about that like it's a glimpse into a larger thing, which I thought was very cool. So yeah, there's a couple of shots in particular where I was like, oh damn, like they fucking went for this, and I thought it worked pretty well. So definitely recommend people checking it out, especially if you're into Benson and Moorhead stuff. Primarily, I would say stuff like The Endless and Resolution to a certain extent. So, and that is it for me this week. From me this week, I started to say. So let's get into our main topic. This week we are talking about The Changeling, 1980 Canadian supernatural psychological horror film, directed by Peter Medak, written by William Gray and Diana Maddox, and starring George C. Scott, Trish Van Devere, and Melvin Douglas. It's based off of a story by Russell Hunter, who was an American writer, playwright, and composer, based off of what I read on Wikipedia, and maybe I was on IMDb as well. I can't remember. This is based off of stuff that he said happened to him. So there's an element in here that he claims comes from his own life when he was living in this old mansion, and supposedly or allegedly communicated with this ghost of this dead kid, and all kinds of wacky shit that went down. I think it's in the Wikipedia article. It sounds like there were some people that pushed back on this in the years since of like, this sounds like total bullshit that he made up, but who knows. But that's I did not know that until last night when I was watching the movie, and at one point paused it and was reading about it. Wikipedia here describes it. Plot follows an esteemed New York City composer who relocates to a Seattle mansion he comes to believe is haunted. Oh shit, it's right there at the beginning. That's right. So when Russell Hunter was living in the Henry Treat Rogers mansion in Denver, Colorado in the late 1960s. Another thing about this movie, I already mentioned that I did not know until last night that it is Canadian as fuck. It's apparently one of the more influential Canadian horror films. It's a movie that's been on my radar for years and years and years, maybe close to the beginning of the podcast when we started, because I had a copy for a long time and probably still have in my garage in a big container I have of old DVDs and Blu-rays. I had it on DVD because there was no Blu-ray release for the longest time. I believe Severin put out a Blu-ray since then. So always on my radar, always remembered the poster of the wheelchair with all the cobwebs on it, but didn't really know much about it other than that it was a supernatural thing. Andi floated out 3 movies earlier this week that we could pick from, and I already owned all 3 and was down to do all 3. So was Dave. So he was like, let's just do all 3. So we're doing them in the order that they came out, which also happened to be alphabetical order. So all the stars aligned. I don't know. Is there any other context for why we're doing this film this week, Andi, or was it more just it was on one of the lists that you've got?
Yeah, I was just looking in different places, what movies are available, which movies would I like to do of those, and The Changeling has been one that's been on my radar, just as yours, for a long time. It's a movie that comes up when you listen to horror podcasts. Cargill talks about it all the time. It's one of those movies, as you said in your intro, when you said a classic question mark. It is one of those classics that not everyone has seen. It's not on the level of an Exorcist or The Omen or Poltergeist or something like that. But for people who are deep into horror, I think this is one of those classics that at some point you will watch. And
Yeah.
so for that reason, it has been on my radar for a long time. It wasn't always available for me. And now, this week when I did my research for what could we do next, it was one of those that came onto my radar again, as it was currently available, and here we are.
All right, perfect. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's, as we do, go around the circle here and say kind of our brief overview, overall thoughts on the film. Dave, kick us off this week. What did you think of The Changeling?
Just in time for the dog to kick off because people are walking past the window. Yeah, so this is the first time that I've seen the movie. It's a movie that I've had on my wanted list for some time, but there's so much stuff. I've got so many mountains of shame of things to get through, and the amount of time I have to dedicate on getting through an unearthly amount of anime and the time that I seem to be able to do it. Basically, it just kind of sat there on the list, and I never got around to watching it. I'd never even heard of it until I was listening to, talking of podcasts, a 2018 episode of Postmortem with Mick Garris, where he had Peter Medak, the director, on. And first of all, Peter Medak is amazing to listen to because he's a Hungarian guy, I believe, and he's just got this wonderful thick accent that honestly I could just listen to him reading the phone book. He's one of those dudes. And so they talked about the Changeling, and a bunch of other movies that he'd made, and like I didn't even realize, because they didn't go into it, at least I don't remember them going into it at the time, that this is a guy who also directed movies like The Craze from 1990, which was a movie that we had on VHS and that I watched incessantly as a kid, and probably shouldn't have given the subject matter. He then went on to make Species 2 in 1998, so no good deed goes unpunished.
There were a lot of movies in his filmography. There's a partial filmography, at least on Wikipedia, that when I saw it, I was like, Species 2, that's crazy. And then I was like, man, some fucking classic. Well, no, I guess that's the 80s Twilight Zone. But the Button, he did that one, which they made. It was I think it's a Richard Matheson one. They made it into the box, that movie. But then he did an episode of The Wire. He did an episode of Breaking Bad. Some
he was on
Hannibal.
Yeah.
Some
he's
crazy
had
stuff.
A really varied career. And unsurprisingly, as and I'm just going to make sure, Hungarian British filmmaker. So yeah. As a European filmmaker, he would make quite a few films over in the UK, including Let Him Have It, which I think, if I remember correctly, it was remade later on as The Essex Boys, which is a story of a guy that was hung, some would argue unjustly, because his partner in crime shot a police officer after he said to him, "Let him have it." The argument was that he was saying, "Let him have the gun," and not shoot him, which is oftentimes what "Let Him Have It" would be construed as meaning. But anyway, back to The Changeling. I very much enjoyed the film. I was struggling for the first 15 minutes, thinking, I recognise the lead actor. And then I realised it's George C. Scott, of course. I've seen him in Dr. Strangelove as a much younger man, among other things. Gene Marsh makes a very short appearance as his wife at the beginning of the movie as well. It was a nice surprise to see her, and then a terrible surprise to find out what happens to her immediately. And
terrible surprise.
A terrible surprise. But here's the thing, like, what I really like about this movie, and I think it's summed up by that opening scene, is the fact that, like, this is about as low budget as you're going to get in a horror movie. Practical effects are used to really kind of like the greatest effect possible. I think that they get the best bang for their buck that they can with what they're doing. There are a couple of scenes which verge on laughable, and I'll talk about that when we get to it, if we get to it. Otherwise, I'll bring it up at the end. But yeah, like, for the most part, I thought that it was a pretty well-crafted movie that was obviously working within a budget. I didn't realise it was a Canadian production until I read it on Wikipedia myself. But yeah, like, some of the faces that turn up in this movie, I was just like, dude, like, you're a sci-fi fan. I can tell, because, like, John Colicos is in there, and he's probably best known for playing Core in both the original series of Star Trek and then returning in Deep Space Nine a couple of times. With newly minted forehead ridges, because who can talk about Star Trek without talking about the Klingon issue? He's just like one of those actors that when you see him, you immediately recognize him. Like, he's got a very recognizable face. But then not only that, Barry Morse turns up. And for those that aren't at all familiar with who Barry Morse is, If you have been a fan of Thunderbirds and Stingray and all of the other Jerry Anderson productions, you may be aware that there was a 2 or 3 season long sci-fi franchise that was spawned from their studio called Space 1999.
This is not the first time you've brought up this on the podcast over the years, and this will also not be the first time I say the next thing, which is I don't know anything about this show other than the logo kicks fucking ass.
It kicks ass, for sure.
There was Archaea did years ago when Austin and I were doing Hideous Energy before I was in comics. Archaea got the license for a graphic novel, and I remember looking at that cover all the time. I came so close to buying that collection multiple times just because of that logo, where I was like, what is this? It looks so fucking cool. But I knew that I had no knowledge, and it seemed like something that was for fans of the show. But anyway, it cracks me up every time you bring up Space 1999.
It's such a great concept. Like Martin Landau was the lead in the show because everything Jerry Anderson did was a case of, we need to make it so that Americans think it's an American show. So let's get someone with an American accent to play the lead. But then literally, like, it was as British sci-fi as you could get. And Barry Morse played, I can't remember the character's name right now, like Dr. Victor Heinrich or something like that. Hendrik.
So he's the guy that talks about how they have mediums coming in.
Yes. Yeah. So he's the guy with the glorious mutton chops and like the skullet. And he's just one of those actors that you see him and like you just absolutely recognize him immediately. And I was like, holy shit, like what the fuck? Like that. It wasn't until I saw John Colicos again that I was like, my God, there's like several people in this movie that are that have got a real kind of like sci-fi pedigree. And of course, whenever I see sci-fi actors, I'll immediately call it out because that's probably my first true love where it comes to TV and movie.
He also apparently played Tommy. I only know the movie The Fugitive, but the show he played Tommy Lee Jones's character. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
The guy pursuing Kimball.
So The Fugitive was shown on. Sorry, I'm going way off track here, but such is the case. I remember them showing the original series of The Fugitive on Sunday afternoon TV in the UK. It was never one that I was too bothered about because, if I remember correctly, it was sandwiched between Land of the Giants and some other sci-fi show. It might have even been the original series of Star Trek. We're talking back in the early 90s at this point. So yeah, it wasn't one that I was too familiar with. But yeah, like the dude had a career. Like, talk about the director of this piece. Like, some of the actors in this thing, they just had like a hell of a career. I mean, was it Melvin Douglas who has got the Triple Crown? He won a Tony, an Emmy, and 2 Academy Awards. He's the guy that plays the senator. Like there are some real acting chops on display in this film. And just like getting back to it, like the seance scene that you kind of alluded to, I really enjoyed that. Like the concept of automatic writing being brought into it, which is not something that I've seen used in a movie seance before. Maybe I'm just very sheltered where it comes to movie seances, but I don't remember seeing that being used in any other seance that I can recall. And then, like, you know, the idea of him recording the seance and then playing it back, it didn't feel contrived. Everything felt like it was written and acted in such a way that it felt completely natural. Like he has the recorder because he's a guy that records his pieces as he's writing them. So of course, like, he would have that to hand. It wouldn't be a stretch to think he would want to record what was going on. And yeah, it was not the story that I was expecting, because every time that the Changeling is brought up and has been brought up subsequently to me hearing about it for the first time, people talk about it in really glowing terms. But the way they talk about it, you expect it to be this really chilling, like harrowing bit of filmmaking. And I was sitting there waiting for the harrowing stuff to arrive, and it never really did. And that might be because in 2026, when we've got movies about demonic clowns that will rip people to pieces and probably produce more blood on screen. In fact, there is a world record for Terrifier, isn't there? Where they use the most amount of blood. Like we've become so desensitized in horror filmmaking that sometimes simple ghost stories can feel a little bit simple in comparison. But also, I have to say, George C. Scott's reaction to some of the things he sees, he's such a fucking dude. Like, he's just like, oh, there's a drowning person in the bathtub. I'm just going to back out. Doesn't freak out. Doesn't lose his mind. He's just like, yeah, drowning boy, leaving now. And just backs out very slowly. And I don't know if that's great acting or if that's terrible acting, but I'm probably not the person that should be criticizing someone of the stature of George C. Scott, so I won't. I have to say, like, for a first viewing, expecting one thing and then getting another, I really enjoyed it, actually. I got some real vibes of other movies, which we'll probably get to when we talk about double features. Because I want to bury the lead for once. But yeah, like I very much enjoyed it. So sorry, I've rambled on way too long now. I'm going to give one of you two guys a chance to chime in on the movie instead.
Andi, you go next.
I also enjoyed it a lot, but I'm also very happy that Dave said that a few things in this movie are, he said laughable. I would have said ridiculous or silly, but I think it's the same vibe, because I watched it with my wife Bianca, and at points we commented on things in the movie that, I don't know, that I do not understand the world that guy is living in, but to me some things just do not really make sense, but it's for the sake of the movie. But let's talk about the positive things. I was very impressed by the editing, especially in the first half of the movie. I think the transitions from one scene into the next, where you definitely or visibly change the place and you're later in time, but the narrative goes straight on from one scene to the next, where they mention something in a scene, then cut, you see them in a different place but still working on the same thing, or this moment when he plays the piano in the classroom, and then you have a cut to the symphony and it's the same piece of music, so there's a connection there, and they do that a lot, especially in the first half of the movie. I thought the atmosphere was great camera work, fantastic score, so that really drew me in. I thought the movie lost a little bit of that in the second half, when it just becomes a criminal investigation. And that's, to me, not the strongest part of the movie. And again, that's a part of the movie where some of things do not quite make sense to me. Pointing out to the moment when they dig up the skeleton underneath the house, and he's never questioned why did he rip off did he come to that house and have them rip up the floors and dig for a skeleton. And then they ask him, do you think there's more down there? And he says no, and then he breaks into the house to find the amulet, to the medal. And then he says, I can't bring it to the police. They wouldn't believe me that I dug it up down there because they didn't see me do it. Well, you could have told them that you think there's more down there and let them dig. But okay, that's not where the movie wanted to go. But those are the questions that then arise in the viewer's mind. The main big thing that we laughed at in the beginning of the movie was, okay, you're coming from a New York apartment and you're moving into this giant mansion, which was supposed to become a museum, but it's also perfect living space for a single person. In which world does that make sense, that he's moving into this huge house?
Apparently in America,
anyway,
you
again,
become single and you just upgrade everything. What the fuck?
I mean, it makes sense that apparently he's never visited the upper floor of the house. It seems like he only lives downstairs, and he only had a look at the downstairs because he suddenly finds things like hidden doors in the upstairs. But again, those are quibbles, which I think maybe are part of the reason why the movie isn't on a level of The Exorcist or even The Omen, and The Omen isn't on the level of The Exorcist, especially nowadays. But yeah, I think the overall atmosphere works very well. I think the movie is very well made. I absolutely enjoyed it. I had a good time watching it. I thought the story itself was intriguing. This idea of the guy killed his son because of the fear of losing all that money and the position and everything, and then just getting another boy and
Yeah.
having him act as the son and becoming this senator. And yeah, as I said, just the part of the movie when it becomes more or less straight up criminal investigation, which doesn't make too much sense in some aspects, isn't the strongest part of the movie. But overall, I think it's very good and well worth watching. What's your take, David?
I'm close to you guys, maybe a little less into it, but not. I don't think it's bad by any means. I think there were times during it that I felt maybe similarly to how you had talked about, Andi, your reaction to "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream," where it's like, okay, I see the impact that this had on other films. Like there were different moments and scenes and shots and ideas and executions that I could see like, oh, there was something like this in The Conjuring or something like this, like other movies down the line that were influenced by it. It holding up for me now, there were moments for sure that I think were effective. It's the biggest thing for me, and Dave touched on this already, and I thought this within the first 20 minutes of the movie, and then I saw later on that my boy Roger Ebert said something very similar, so I felt very justified in feeling how I felt. It's a movie that, so I will give it credit for this, like it's ahead of its time in the sense that it has a movie that is like rooted in tragedy, rooted in depression or grief or whatever else, that the movie isn't necessarily then built around that idea. It's not then a metaphor that's extended, because that became a thing obviously in more recent years that horror films like really latched onto. I think a handful of movies did it well, and then so many other movies ran with it. It happened with video games a lot too. And I say this as somebody who has suffered from pretty bad depression in the past and anxiety and everything else. So I'm not making light of these things, and I think they can definitely resonate and work a lot of the times. But it became a thing that kind of got out of control, I think, in some ways. And this film weirdly circumnavigates that in a way that almost does it too much, that it was odd to me. So the beginning of it, the terrible surprise that Dave mentioned, this fucking truck gets a 2-for-1 special and wipes out this guy's family. Like, it's one of the most kind of convoluted, weird ways of being killed, because there's so much open space, like, and no other cars on the road anyway. But when you see it happen, it is pretty crazy. And that was, I only wrote down 2 notes, and the first note I wrote down was that whole sequence, even though it's kind of wonky, it's pretty effective in the way that it cuts back to him in silence and then freeze frames and has the title of the film. I thought was pretty great. That was kind of a badass move, I thought. Like it felt very chilling. It worked. You're just like, holy shit, like what is this movie? Where's this gonna go now? Like, what is I thought this was a haunted house movie, and I just saw a family get killed. Like what's happening?
There's a weird moment that he doesn't run out of the telephone booth. He stays inside and bangs the doors from inside the telephone booth.
He like forgets how the door works that he used to get in. The odd thing after that is that George C. Scott seems very unbothered by the fact that his family got killed. It is weird. It is an odd sort of, I don't know. There's one moment where he is having a dream and he wakes up, or he has woken up and he's crying, and his acting's okay. But most of the movie, he's just very okay. It feels like he's pretty chill. Like he's there to work. Like it doesn't feel like he's moved on in the sense of like, all right, time to get a new family. But I don't know. It that to me felt sort of odd. And Ebert in the Chicago Sun-Times, I'll just read his quote here from his review. If it only took craftsmanship to make a haunted house movie, The Changeling would be a great one. It has all of the technical requirements, beginning with the haunted house itself. The film does have some interesting ideas, but it doesn't have that sneaky sense of awful things about to happen. Scott makes the hero so rational, normal, and self-possessed that we never feel he's in real danger. We go through this movie with too much confidence. And I felt that was pretty spot on. That was the vibe I had throughout the entire sort of movie. It was a concept I'd never really considered before. And it is very obvious and like makes sense that, yeah, through the actors' performances, it's going to carry more of, I think I always thought in the past that like a movie being scary comes from the execution of the scares. And obviously I think that's a huge part of it, whether it's, jump scares or atmosphere or whatever else. But I had never really thought about that idea until I saw George C. Scott not do it in a movie where if they don't seem scared or seem affected in a way that's believable enough, that is going to carry over a bit into how you're perceiving and watching the film. I don't think he's bad in the movie. He's obviously known for all these great roles in movies that I haven't really seen. For me, I think of him in Exorcist 3, which we talked about on the show. We did an episode
Not the
on.
best way to be
But he's good at
yeah.
Exorcist 3, and it's a pretty good movie.
I suppose.
Like, he's like a more like rugged, like hard-boiled kind of cop or whatever in that, from what I remember.
I think isn't he military, like Air Force or something?
I don't remember. He might be that too. I mean, I know he's a cop because he's like there investigating the.
But yeah.
But
if I could just jump in for a second, David,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
apologise.
No, go for it.
I think that we're so used to the protagonist of a horror movie being freaked out by what they're seeing, and I completely agree with what you're saying. That like I think part of the job of a horror movie protagonist is to engender that feeling of unsettlement and fear, and to transmit it to the audience. But I do think it's interesting that they choose to do something else. I don't know if this is a case of the director telling Scott to do it a different way, or if this is just Scott's interpretation. But not everybody will react to every situation the same way. There are rationalists out there who will be freaked out by a ball coming down the stairs after they've thrown it into the Seattle Sound, which, by the way, massive shout out to my former wrestling watching past, because I'm pretty sure that they recreated that scene later on with Booker T and Stone Cold Steve Austin throwing the World Championship into the river. It may have been Booker T or it may have been The Rock. I can't quite remember. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that was that either it's a very popular place to throw things away, or it was a reference to the Changeling. And I'm only just realizing this now, 20 years after the fact. But back to my point, I think that if George C. Scott is playing a rationalist, and that he may be emotionally stunted as a result of his loss. Going back to the earlier point about how he reacts to his wife and child being run over by that truck, which, I mean, 10 out of 10 for the dummy worker when they lay them on the floor. Like, how are we going to get these dummies to stand up? We don't. We have them slip over and lay down. Like,
it's also one of those, I get it that it's a movie. It's also one of those very wild moments where you're like, of all the things you could do with your daughter standing there, get behind a different car, run off to the side,
grab her,
laying prone on the ground.
Yeah,
is a crazy decision.
It's a weird one,
but
because the truck will go over you, but the fucking car won't. Like the car in front. But yeah, so I like the fact that he's portraying a different reaction to a haunted house, because like if you actually do look at it from a rational point of view, at what point does he feel threatened? Does he become physically threatened by the presence in the house? Well, not until the very end, where he gets blown off a balcony. Up until that point, the worst that happens is a ball falls down the stairs and a wheelchair appears at the top of the stairs. So it feels more like a haunting rather than a poltergeist-style malevolent presence which is trying to harm him. And it doesn't try to harm him or anyone else until it looks like the secret is not going to be unearthed. Which is a very strange decision made by the script here as well. ultimately it comes to a resolution. But I would say that not necessarily the one that we thought it was leading to, being a procedural.
And I don't disagree. I mean, I think George C. Scott's character in this movie, and then just him as an actor, the way he looks, physicality, whatever else, like, for sure. I wasn't expecting or needing him to be, just horrified, terrified, trembling with, throughout the movie. But
I get your point, and I agree with it.
He seems pretty chill.
I think the film would be better if there was a secondary protagonist like his wife, actually, Trish Van Devere, who I didn't realize
I was going to say
until afterwards.
There's a couple moments with her. There's actually one moment with her where she's very good, but also is a little. It's almost the opposite thing. There's a moment where it's after the seance thing. She's freaking out.
Wheelchair.
It is the wheelchair. Yeah. She's great with it. Like her reaction and her getting scared is you're just like, holy fuck, what's it like? What is she looking at? This is gonna be like the kid standing there with his head in his own hands holding a fucking knife. Like it cuts to a wheelchair at the top of the stairs, and you're like, all right, maybe a little extreme of a reaction, but
in fairness, she has a massive irrational fear of wheelchairs because she's later chased by one the whole way around the house, which was one of the laughable moments that I was going to point to when the opportunity arose, because it's a fucking wheelchair. It's not going to kill you if it runs you over. Right. I know people have already been run over in this movie, but like a wheelchair is not going to do the job. Just sidestep it.
I will say too, like as much as I have these kind of like minor criticisms of how it maybe cuts its own legs out underneath it a little bit in terms of the scares and everything else. There is something I also thought about a little bit from this could be way off base, but based off of my memory at least of when we read Cold Moon Over Babylon, these sort of like older 70s, 80s like ghost stories and how they're structured and how they have, elaborate sort of backstories for or situations that are going on in terms of like Andi mentioned it earlier, like it's not just that this dude killed his kid in the house, it's that he killed his kid in the house so that he wouldn't maybe potentially die before the age of 21 and then lose all the money that his kid would have access to. Then he adopted a kid, sent him to another country, is controlling all this stuff. This guy becomes a U.S. senator who is in the movie as an old man. Like, it's a very elaborate sort of like, crime mystery drama sort of thing that's at the core of it. So there's definitely part of me that's like, all right, this maybe was a little less effective than it could be in terms of some of the atmosphere or scares or whatever else. But I also will for sure acknowledge that like, it's not trying to be a, Insidious or, one of these movies that's like really kind of going for your throat with the scares and with the atmosphere and the roller coastery haunted house sort of ride that we think of now. And I liked it for that. Another movie I thought of for some reason, probably just the era, was one you and I did, Dave. I think Andi was might have been the year he was traveling. The Legend of Hell House, the Richard Matheson book that they made into a movie. That one was much more, kind of really grab you by the throat. It was a little bit more visceral in terms of the threats and the scares and everything else. But similar sort of thing where they're like are bringing in seance methods and technology and different things to try to interpret or figure out what's going on within this house. And it's a different kind of haunted house, haunting movie than what we're used to now. But then there are those moments throughout this film with whether it's the wheelchair stuff or the ball, some of the door slamming, the seance scene where you can see the influence that it had to have had on other movies, down the line.
One question. And this has basically nothing to do with the movie.
My favorite kind of question.
And if one of us can answer this question, it is Dave Roberts, or at least Dave Roberts has an explanation for it. If he knows about it or not, he will make up an explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. That's me. You've got me. You understand me.
There was. I've known you for quite some time now. There's one thing that really had me puzzled. Towards the end of the movie, that senator gets on his private jet and he sits sideways on the plane, like on the London Tube, And I was wondering, is that a real thing? Did planes have these sideways seats in the 70s? It feels like when that plane takes off, you would be pushed to the side, and
Yeah.
that seemed very weird to me.
That's a U.S.
Yeah.
senator thing. That's the senatorial seat. That was very popular in the early 80s.
Genuinely have no idea. Like I was a glint in my father's eye when this movie
I'd
was
never
made.
seen that in a movie or anything, that you could
Yeah, it
sit
is weird.
sideways on a plane.
I mean, I know that
Yeah.
I've seen movies where they have like swivel chairs, where
Yeah.
and that, now thinking about it, I've never really considered it before, but that can't be very safe in an air crash. But then I guess maybe private jets aren't big enough that you've got much of a chance of surviving anyway. So you might as well be comfortable. I don't know. I really don't know.
I mean,
called
it
me
makes
out on
sense
my
when
bullshit now.
when the plane is in the air but doing takeoff. It felt like a very unsafe position to sit in.
Especially for someone that's probably 80 plus years old. Yeah, like
Yes,
it snapped
absolutely.
like a twig. Yeah, I've got no answer. Perhaps because you've called me on my BS, but yeah, it looks good.
I mean, that way he can still position the camera in a way that everyone can talk to each other on that plane, or he can look out
That's
the
probably
door or whatever the situation was. But yeah, I don't know, felt weird. Also, the good old times where you could just drive your car onto the tarmac right up to the plane and
Yeah.
and almost punch a senator.
which is exactly why they don't allow you to do that anymore.
The only other note that I wrote down was I really liked the delivery of George C. Scott when he comes into the house. It's in like the third act of the movie, and he's just like, "You goddamn son of a bitch." He's talking to the ghost. I thought that was pretty funny. Just
seemed
fed
weird
up with
that
it. Just
are
ready
you
to
now
solve
insulting the little
mystery.
kid that was drowned by
Yeah.
his father? What kind of tone is that now?
I didn't understand why he was so angry with this ghost when ultimately, like, the ghost just needs help, right? Like, it hasn't lied to
he's
him.
fed up. Wants
Yeah,
to
he's
figure
just
out the
like,
mystery so he can get back to writing his music.
Yeah, and
He's
like,
had to
if-
deal with one dead kid too many already.
Yeah,
So.
if anyone comes out of this movie looking like an arsehole, it's him, because ultimately, like, he sets about trying to help this kid, and then he's just like, "Fuck it, you have the pendant. I'm done with this bullshit. Like, goodbye, Senator." And then the ghost has to take matters into his own hands. At which point, I'm like, "Well, could you always do this?" So, like, did you? If you know that the Senator has taken your life, essentially, not actually, because the father was the one that took his life, but you know what I mean. Like, the
replaced him.
Senator is the Changeling, which I was kind of confused by the name, but then I looked.
Holy
it up
shit,
and
dude! I didn't think about that until that makes total sense. I thought about that midway through the movie too. Where I was like, why the fuck is this called the Changeling? But now that you say that, that's exactly why. I'm an idiot. You're much smarter.
I also thought it was great how comfortable the senator got at home in his shirt and tie, but with this weird overcoat. Oh yeah, obviously you're at home making yourself comfortable, where you just take off your formal jacket and put on another jacket over your shirt and tie.
I think, Andy, we're both familiar with Cody Raheem Rhodes at this point. A man who never takes his suit off even when he goes to the beach with his family.
If he had just still have his regular jacket on at home, I wouldn't have thought a thing. But no, he took
got a different one.
his Hugh Hefner style house coat and put it over his shirt and tie.
Yeah, I mean, I won't hear anything against house coats. They're comfortable at AF, but I've never...
Take off the tie, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
If you want to make yourself comfortable, the first thing you do is take off the tie, not the jacket, and
or
replace it with a
at
different
least.
jacket.
But that's the that's his old Victorian upbringing showing itself, you know, like very barely Victorian actually. But that was another thing as well. This movie's set in like 1980, filmed in 1979, but released in 1980. I mean, that's like 46 years ago. And then on top of that, you're talking about a senator who's 80 odd years old. So that's 1900. Like, that seems like an impossibly long time ago now, because obviously there are no 140 something year old people in the world. Like, no one in living memory was born in that era. It's
Yeah,
just
it says he was Joseph Carmichael was a 6-year-old murdered in 1906.
yeah,
Put that in perspective, at least. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's crazy.
The things, and then in the story they say, and they brought him back after World War One, back to the
Yeah,
States,
yeah.
and then you still have World War Two, fascistic
Yeah.
boogaloo ahead of you, and so yeah, being born in 1900, that sounds really crazy.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
insane.
it's just it's a long fucking time ago. It just when they were talking about like 1909, I was like, why the fuck do you need to go that far back? And I was like, oh no, wait, that's not that long ago according to them. Fair enough.
I have two more small, interesting pieces of trivia. Joshua Jackson from Dawson's Creek and Fringe. Apparently, this is his first on-screen appearance as a 7-month-old baby. I don't even remember where this baby was in this movie.
Yeah, me neither. I had read that before, but then didn't pay attention to look for a baby because I didn't know what the what his character, quote unquote, would be like. But yeah, it was uncredited baby in a stroller, so it just probably
so
some
literally an extra,
some street scene probably.
But his mother, it says Fiona Jackson, was an assistant director on the film. I thought that was interesting. And then Peter Medak, I saw earlier when I was looking him up, that in 2017 he made a made-for-TV film called Dating Game Killer about Rodney Alcala.
You've got to be kidding
me. Yeah.
Everything's a circle.
From Andi's movie earlier, yeah. It's all connected. Pretty crazy stuff.
I had no idea.
Well, there's your double feature right there.
I guess.
if I had known beforehand, maybe, yeah. I did watch the wrong Dating Game Killer movie this week.
Yeah.
I wanted to watch the Peter Medak one, but yeah, picked the wrong one.
Do you guys have any other big thoughts on this? I feel like we're kind of at the end. I mean,
just to kind of pick up on what I was saying, I do feel like the narrative takes a weird turn in the final act where he decides, fuck it, I've had enough of this shit, and basically just abandons his search for justice. It felt like you could literally just put all of this information in the lap of the police and be like, well, do with it what you want. But no, he just gives the St. Christopher back to the senator and is just like, fuck that ghost. I'm going home. Like, you know. And like this is all apparently based on like a true event that happened when Russell Hunter was living at the Henry Treat Rogers Mansion in Chesham Park, Denver, Colorado. It has been disputed since because the public library has no record of him living there. But apparently very similar stuff did happen to him, and so if this is literally what he did, then he's a dickhead. Because why wouldn't you see justice done for a ghost child who literally up until that point gave you no reason to throw it back in his face? Like that's what annoys me most, is the fact that this John Russell character basically is just like, it's too hard to prove it, so I'm just going to give up. And like, you know, in the words of Michael Jordan, fuck them kids. It just feels very defeatist. And then, like I said, the ghost takes things into his own hands, and it's like, well, why couldn't you do that to begin with if you were happy just having the guy killed? And it's a very hard 180 from the ghost of a kid who literally is just trying to get someone to help them and is playing very simple games like rolling balls downstairs and stuff to get your attention, to just being like a full-on pyromaniac who will try to throw you off the second floor balcony and give a guy a heart attack. But the visuals I did like very much, like the visual of the senator walking up the flaming stairs. The fact that they established early on that teleportation is possible in this, it's one of the powers that this ghost has. Although whether you can teleport a whole human over a bouncing ball is a different matter. It made me think for a second, is he actually there, or is this symbolic, or is he seeing this in his mind? Because it looks like we're seeing it from John Russell's point of view. And then the guy just fucking cacks it, dies of a heart attack in his office. the sight of that desk shaking up and down and this octogenarian just hanging on for dear life. And I don't doubt for a second that the actor was like, I really don't want to break a hip here. It was another one of those laughable moments, but it wasn't too far away from being a really well executed moment. So I don't know. Yeah, the final act of the film kind of lets it down slightly just because of some of the character choices. But I have to agree with everything that Andy said about the editing. Certainly early on in the movie, the use of music throughout the movie with Scott's character being a composer, it made a lot of sense, and I think it really lent something to the movie. Having this kind of classical music score running through it, and that's it.
Very early on in the movie, I think maybe that was the first time that they did the editing thing, when he stands in the empty apartment about to move out, and the ball bounces towards him, and then it cuts back to the past when the books are still on the shelf, and he's there, and his daughter's there with the ball, and then they keep doing that. I thought that was really great. That I really did enjoy about the movie.
Yeah,
I'm a sucker for edits like that. There's one I always think of in The Bedroom, which is a film I absolutely love that I think is kind of forgotten. Had Sissy Spacek and Chris Cooper. What the fuck is that guy's name? I can't remember now. No, it's Tom Wilkinson. And their son is killed. Their adult son is murdered. The characters in this film, his parents are the main, and I think he's fixing something in the tree, or he's maybe taking down a tree house that his son had when he's little, and he's climbing the tree, and you get a POV shot of him looking up into the tree, and it's just a jump cut to his son as like a 5-year-old looking down at him and smiling. And it's clearly a memory of when he was younger. And so effective. I remember that's probably the first time a jump cut like that stuck out to me, where it just grabs you by the throat, just especially with stuff like that, with grief and memories and everything. I also was going to say, I really liked the way that they used, this is again something we've seen in specifically haunting films in years since. And in fact, there are some movies that revolve around this conceit entirely as sort of like what's going on, which I won't name because it would spoil the movies. But the idea of like time sort of being messed with. So like the piano thing that he's writing, and then it's heard later is it like a music box or something? I'm trying to remember now. And then the banging that he's hearing every morning, and then later when he's banging trying to get into the door, he realizes that that's the noise, like not necessarily that it was him making the noise, but that's where the noise is coming from. Like, and
then he starts pounding in rhythm with it as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like that stuff I think is pretty cool. And again, something that I'm sure at the time especially was even more novel, that now we see quite a bit.
It's got some great pieces, and it just doesn't, to use an analogy of an orchestra, because I'm going to try and make myself sound smart here because I'm linking it to the film, but like it's like an orchestra missing like one instrument, but like a really obvious instrument, like the violin section, or maybe a better example would be like an instrument that lays like bass down, like oboes or like basses. That would be an obvious choice. So you've got all of the parts almost to make this brilliant piece, but it's just missing something, or maybe it's just maybe the instruments are being played slightly in the wrong way, which just doesn't quite fit with everything else. And yeah, like it's there are some really great technical pieces to this movie, and then it's kind of just let down a little bit by some of the later writing, and there are one or two performances that in parts don't really, as you were saying, for like George C. Scott's reactions to a lot of what's going on, it just doesn't really lend itself to a air quote scary movie. It almost feels like a police procedural where the victim happens to be a ghost who can talk to the detectives.
Yeah. Looking your metaphor, within the movie, it critiques itself exactly that same way after the concert when George C. Scott says, it would have been better if I had played the piano.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm so
there you go.
smart. Thank you for making me look smart, Andy.
I would say too, this is for anyone listening, if you are a fan of this subgenre of horror, I think this would like rocket to the top of my favorites if I was like, especially of older haunting films and stuff. Like I think there's so much to it, especially if you're already a fan of it there. Like when I was looking at Letterboxd, people that I follow, I saw kind of I think most people that I follow had kind of where we were at, maybe a little bit more so you guys. I don't know. I still liked it quite a bit, I think, and just had maybe more caveats for it for me. Where it was like, oh yeah, this is cool, and it has these cool moments and whatever else. But then there were some people on there who were like, this movie I liked as when I was younger, but like rewatching it now, like it's a modern classic for me. Like it definitely kind of, I think, rocketed up in terms of, and that goes hand in hand with what we were talking about at the beginning of the segment within the horror community. It's one that like your average person probably isn't going to remember it, but the horror world definitely has embraced it more and more over time, I think. So
yeah, it definitely has that kind of feeling of cult classic in there, where it's really appreciated by the people that appreciate it, and then it's lost on a lot of people that don't necessarily really care about the slightly less obvious movies. I think this is definitely a movie that if you enjoy horror movies, especially as you were saying, like if you like this particular genre of horror, like the kind of ghost haunting kind of genre, especially one where the haunting isn't necessarily the main focus, but it's almost like a I've forgotten the word for it, and that's really fucking annoying. Symptom, there we go. Got it eventually. Where the haunting is a symptom of the overall story of where they want to take it. I think this one bears watching. I think it's definitely worth people checking out. There's way too much about this movie that is worth looking at, that you can completely forgive the car chase with the wheelchair and things like that. Like, they're silly, but ultimately, like, there's a lot of worthwhile stuff in this movie that people should be checking out.
Totally. Okay, cool. Let's do some double feature picks. What did you roll with this week, Andi?
Although the movie doesn't quite carry through the topic of grief and trauma, but still, because of that element and because of the atmosphere and the great technical work, I picked Don't Look Now, Nicholas Roeg, 1973. Probably one of the ultimate horror movies when it comes to trauma, and the especially the trauma of having lost a child.
Absolutely,
just a great movie, and that one is an undisputed classic.
And I still have not seen it, and yet, as I was watching The Changeling, I thought a couple times, I bet this is like Don't Look Now. I know enough about Don't Look Now that it felt like a spiritual successor. I don't remember when Don't Look Now came out. It's a little bit old. It's 70s, right?
73, I think, yeah.
73, okay, cool. Dave, what you got?
I picked 3. Because
wow, okay.
Well, it will become obvious why in a second. So the first one I thought of was Don't Look Now. Funnily enough,
there you go.
Sure. So again, I feel smart. Thank you, Andy. And then I thought, well, there's other movies that kind of there are other aspects of this film that fit with other picks. So I also went with and this is a trio of movies that I've absolutely picked for double features before. Because I've got like 8 films in my head that I double feature with everything, and that's how things work with me. So,
I'm curious how you make Body Snatchers work with this one.
I'll make it work somehow, Andy. I'll make it work somehow.
There's some sci-fi actor in it.
Yeah, don't try me. I mean, it's a sci-fi movie, so. No, my second of the 3 was an underappreciated and quite possibly for a reason movie from 2003 called Gothica, starring Halle Berry. This is going to spoil the kind of the end of the movie, but ultimately, like, that entire movie is about this kind of malevolent, haunting presence that actually turns out to be someone that was wronged and wants revenge against someone who is still alive, and employs the help of a third person to get that revenge. Halle Berry is in the George C. Scott role in this movie. That's a line that I don't think anyone has ever said before. But there you go. And I thought for that reason, it was worth just bringing that up. And sorry, not sorry, I kind of enjoyed Gothica back in the day, despite the fact that I was expecting certain things from it that didn't happen. And then the final pick, the obvious pick. I think this might be the pick that I've made most for any movie double feature in the history of this show. So there'll be no surprise that once again, I've gone to the Fred Astaire, Alice Krieg classic, which is Ghost Story from 1981. A movie.
I thought about that movie too. Yeah.
Nice.
Another movie I haven't seen, haven't read the book, but I was like, I bet this is similar to Ghost Story. Yeah. Just like that era and style of haunted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Came out a year later, and the Senator is also in it.
God damn, he is.
There you go.
He absolutely is. Yes, he plays.
I haven't seen
John
it, but
Joffrey.
looking on IMDb, I did some research on IMDb. I noticed that guy is also in that movie. Yes.
I recognise that pencil moustache. So yeah, it's a movie about 3 old men who are haunted by a ghost who wants revenge on them for something that they did in their younger past. Now, if I said older past, that would be confusing because time only works one way, allegedly. But yeah, I always look for an option, a possibility to recommend this film because I genuinely feel like not enough people know about it, let alone have seen it. So at some point, I'm going to force you guys to watch it. I just need to find somewhere that we can all get it. But yeah, so that's my 3. But I think out of the 3 of them, Don't Look Now is absolutely the one that fits best because of the themes of grief, loss of family. I wondered, because of the title of The Changeling, whether there was going to be some kind of facsimile of his daughter that turned up at some point during the movie, and that didn't happen. But yeah, that was something that, again, I was thinking, that could be a link to Don't Look Now. But yeah, like the themes of loss of a child and any loved one, really. Really.
Of course, Don't Look Now has Donald Sutherland, just as The Body Snatchers has. So there's your Donald Sutherland.
Well, that's the triple. That's the triple hit, right? If I was going for a triple feature, then that's how I link the 3. But yeah. No, there we go. David.
Mine is completely unhinged, but I've created a headcanon storyline where George C. Scott, through 3 horror movies, has just transformative experiences. So first we have The Changeling in 1980, a man who is just barely moved by the fucking death of his wife and daughter, is then very annoyed by a ghost. And then 4 years later, things don't work out. Things keep going poorly for him. I've never seen this movie, so I don't know how well this is going to tie together. But he becomes an assassin, and works as an assassin sort of agent for this organization sent to track down this little girl that can start fires with her mind in 1984's Firestarter. Before finally having a change of heart and on a redemption arc, he becomes a cop 6 years later in New York City in The Exorcist 3. So I just like that George C. Scott was in these 3 horror movies. And he's known for all these other things, but yeah, just some crazy roles in these movies. Never seen Firestarter. I would like to watch it at some point. It's always been on my list, but
same.
Yeah. Put that's my George C. Scott horror trilogy.
Fantastic.
Cool. All right. Listeners, let us know what you thought of The Changeling, or if it's one you've seen in the past and you enjoyed it. Again, I think definitely if you're a fan of haunting films, haunted house stuff, or if you remember some of the stuff we've talked about in the past, Cold Moon over Babylon and, Legend of Hell House, similar sort of vibes. So if you like that kind of stuff, I think this is worth checking out for sure. Shout out to Canada as well. And for it being a Canadian movie, I didn't know it was until last night. Yeah, if you have some thoughts for us, feel free to send them on social media or over at our Gmail, eerieinternational@gmail.com. Am I okay to say what we're doing next week?
Yeah.
Is everybody
Absolutely.
okay with that?
Go for it.
All right,
Sure.
we've got it planned out. Next week, we were talking about The Love Witch from, I want to say, 2016?
That's correct.
Yes, 2016. Written, edited, directed, produced, and scored by Anna Biller. Another movie that's been on our radars for a long time that we have not yet seen.
10 years.
So we're going to be... yeah, no shit, that's crazy. For the past 10 years. So we'll be talking about The Love Witch, and then... Oh, we'll save the announcement for the movie after that for next week. We'll do that. But yeah, let us know. Stay safe out there. Keep watching horror movies, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye bye.